All right, let's get started. Uh, Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here. I want to kind of give you a little bit of an introduction meeting. This is a process that we're going to be exploring together. When I sent this out, I did not actually expect to have 100 people asked to be helped. So we're going to have to figure out the best way to make this a good process together. I think this is as much of a learning experience for me as it is for you. But my goal out of this is to inspire you and help you discover what is the right path and to learn and to grow as someone involved in UX. I've been doing this for 20 years and I know it's a hard road sometimes. So let's get started. So I want to set a couple rules for the group. In order to participate, I ask that you follow these. And really, they're just meant to help us as a group organize and be effective. So first is be ambitious, or be an ambitious participant. Be on time and be ready to go. And what I mean by that is don't waste your time. Be ambitious by seeking out learning opportunities and areas of growth, ways to explore and learn and help and grow. Don't show up and be a wallflower. That's the one thing that I don't care if you don't ask questions all the time, but just be ambitious for learning something. And so don't be afraid to raise your hand, to share. The more you share, the more the group will learn something. Second is respect everyone's personal experience. It's different than yours. So someone may have a different opposing viewpoint. Just respect it and we'll move on and allow everyone to have their own opinions. That's fine. There's going to be a dissenting opinions from yours and there's nothing wrong with that. We want to just allow everybody the opportunity to have a voice. Third is if you'd like to ask a question or share something, place it in the chat. So you will be called upon. So it's a really simple way of us organizing and sharing. If I open it up for discussion, feel free to jump in. But if there's something in between or I'm sharing a slide or something, just raise your hand in the participants area and I will, or ask a question there and I'll pull those answers so that we can go one by one. Fourth is, if you do participate in this process, I'm not counting today, but if you continue to participate in this process, I have one request. I'm not going to charge anybody for this. I love helping people, but I do have a request is that if you participate, you agree to help 2 other people in this group in some way. The details are up to you. And I do that because the best way to learn is to teach. And all of you are going to bring something to the table that you are already good at. And if there is a way that you can help someone else in this group, please reach out to them and offer an introduction, an article, a leaning shoulder to cry on if you're struggling with finding a job, things like that. Everyone here, if they participate, this can be a growing group. And the best way to do that and to facilitate that is on the LinkedIn UX mentorship group that I created. Please make sure that you're in that and a way to chat with each other. And then from time to time, you may bring something you've learned to the group. And so if you have something happen that you think is valuable as a learning experience, please reach out to me and I may include you in our sessions here. I want to have the opportunity for this group to be as much about you learning and growing and sharing and as much as me presenting anything. So to give you a little bit of introduction to myself. So my name is Jonathan Brink. I am currently the UX lead at StreamSets. It's a pipeline development company, really complicated technology. I love my job and I love my team. And I think that's what makes it such a wonderful experience is that I've really found my sweet spot. I actually didn't start in product. I'm actually not a graphic designer. I went to school for film and got a film degree. So I am a creative, and I began in marketing, doing strategic marketing. But around 2000, I had my first request to, and I was mentored in my marketing company in design. So I do know a ton about it. I've been doing it for 25 years. And in 2000, I had my first opportunity to design my first product interface, and I fell in love. That's when I knew what I wanted to do. And since then, I've been working with probably 100 different companies in my career, helping them with, in some form, with UX. So I have been responsible for leading the design of 7 enterprise platforms. So I'm very comfortable in both the startup space and the enterprise space. So we can have both of those conversations. I love both. I love the energy of a startup, and I love the finance of an enterprise. It's nice to have budgets. A little bit about me. I'm a devoted family man. I live and breathe my family. We have a very tight-knit family. We're Italian, and I love family events, and I love my wife and my kids. I have 6 kids from a blended family. So you can see all the craziness here. I love family events. It's one of the funnest things in my life. So a little bit about ambition. Okay, my business mentor always taught me it's important to have an ambition. And so I want to help you get the most out of this. So, excuse me, my first request to you is those who step out of their comfort zone and participate will always gain more than those who don't. Have an ambition. So be a good participant by willing to raise your hand and ask questions, to share something. I know we talked a little bit about this before, but I want to see, this is really the defining ethic of this group. It's the way that it works best is if you step out of your comfort zone and participate. I'm okay if you don't participate every meeting, that's totally fine. But find those moments that you really can add something of value to share or ask or learn. So that's really kind of the defining ethic that I want the group to have. Okay, so in terms of process, how is this going to work? I really thought a lot about this because my first thought was, yeah, I'll pick 4 people. And then I realized, yeah, there's a lot of people who need help. And so this is an experiment at this point to see, can we effectively learn and grow together in a dialogue? I can share a lot, but I also want each of you to share a lot, and don't be afraid to. But the first thing is, if you're really serious about this, join UX Mentorship on LinkedIn. It's just a central place that we can all gather, exchange ideas, introductions, things like that. So it's just kind of like a hub. I've thought about having a Slack channel, and I may do that, but for right now, let's just start with LinkedIn. And if it grows to that, or if you feel like that would be relevant to all of you, please don't hesitate to ask me about that. Second is answer questions. If I pose a question to the group, which we're going to do on this call, please feel free to share your answers. Don't feel like you have nothing to contribute. You have something to contribute, even if this is your first day of wondering, could I be in UX? Because there's going to be lots of topics that we're going to talk about. We could review portfolios. That is a possibility. I know that's going to be a valuable experience for a lot of you because one is you want to know, what is the process? What's it like? How do I get my portfolio better? How do I grow it? How do I put it in the correct form? I actually talked to a friend of mine who's a recruiter, and he's going to be coming in 1 week and joining us so that we can talk to different people. Discuss possibilities. A lot of you are having different scenarios and use cases in your own job search, or growing your UX base, or want to switch jobs. Those are the kind of things that I want to share here, because we're all going to have similar experiences in the same vein. Fifth is I want you to feel the opportunity to network for each other. If someone raises their hand and says, hey, listen, I really need an introduction, or I need help with a job or something, help each other. It's really a simple way of giving back to the group. And it's really the only cost of this group that I request is, do you help each other? It's just a better process that when we learn to give back. And again, I did mention we will have hosted guests And so I'm reaching out to a lot of my network that I think would be valuable conversations to learn and share and grow from around hiring managers, UX leads, working with product managers, things like that. So HR, things like that, that are hopefully going to be helpful. So what I'd like to do is ask, is there anything, this is the first question I will ask you, is there anything missing from this list that you would like to see? Feel free to unmute yourself. And once you're done speaking, go ahead and mute yourself. We'll just make that a common practice that if you're not speaking, so we avoid any background noise, go ahead and mute yourself. But when you share, go ahead and unmute yourself. Make sure nobody else is talking. And who would like to step in? And first, when you share, please introduce yourself and go ahead and share your question or your answer or your thought. Who'd like to go first?
Oh, hello.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, hi. I'm
Meryl, go
Meryl.
ahead, Meryl.
I think what I see that's missing here is like recently I've gone a little bit further in my interview process.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I want to touch upon like design challenge, especially in a virtual setting. I think that's where I don't have a lot of resource how to practice that too. So I want to get better at that.
That is a fantastic idea. I didn't think about that. See, you guys are right out of the gate. You guys are already coming up with great ideas. Who else? There was someone else.
Hi, I'm Nikita, and I was thinking about the interview process itself and the mock-up interviews or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
sessions where folks can interview each other and understand the process.
Fantastic idea. I love it. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Rafael. I was actually thinking about whiteboarding challenges as well. I think those are really good practices, and so many jobs out there ask us to do those kind of things on steps of the interview. So
That's free labor. There's a joke in the UX industry that whiteboard challenges or design challenges are free labor. And it's very true. Companies will actually throw it out there and get 15 candidates to do a design challenge and come up with ideas. It's essentially free labor. Like at Stream Sets, we made a choice that if we ever do that, we're actually going to pay people because people will do that. So who else? Who else would like to join? Share something.
Hi, I can go real quick. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Grace.
Yeah, I'm Grace. I'm a UX UI student at Springboard, which is like a boot camp. I think one thing that could help is if we participated in UX challenges together, because as a boot camp student, I'm doing a lot of things on my own. So I think it'd be cool to like collaborate with each other. And I think in that way, it'll help us to also learn more. So I think that's something that could be cool.
Grace, I think that's a fantastic idea because honestly, one of the key thing here is, one, I want you to learn and grow, but honestly, the best way to grow and learn is to do. And the collaborative process may be very beneficial, but ultimately having something that you can add to your portfolio is going to be huge. Because the reality is, when I hire, and I've hired in my career probably 30 or 40 people, the number one thing that I look for is ambition. I actually don't look for design skill first, because I can teach design skill and I can teach research pretty quickly. But I'm looking for ambition and people who are willing to solve a problem without my intimate help. And I think practicing that and creating something and going after something is a very valuable idea. So I really like that. Who else?
Hello, my name is Daphne. I'm also a UI UX student studying University of Washington. Just a really minor suggestion. I'm wondering if we can get any chances that to review our resume, because I feel like when we are applying, the first round is to screen our resume, and I really want to know how to improve it.
Okay. So here's what I will say about that. I have some really valuable friends that are doing that already. So I have a limited resource in terms of my capacity. Okay. And I felt like the best way to do that is to do this. And so I periodically will review things like resumes and portfolios to give you sort of a screen. But honestly, there is a group of friends that I have that I want to give you. It's called adplist.org. And their mentorship process there is really around that specific thing. So you go there, you sign up, and they give you a mentor. And you can actually have one-on-one mentors in some cases, but largely it's how do I connect with people who can do that? And this is more of a resource issue. I don't have time to do that on a continual basis. So I have to allocate my time effectively. And this is one way we're going to do it. These conversations are really going to be around things you guys care about, but that specifically, I would recommend adplist.org. That group is doing a really good job. Kevin who created it, has done a fantastic job. It's only about 6 months old, and I may even bring Kevin in because I know all of you are going to need that at some point. But that would be what I would suggest as a starting point. Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll jump in. This is just like an add-on. My name's Anastasia, by the way.
Hi, Anastasia.
Hosted guests. I'm wondering if we can kind of get some engineering like people to come in, because I know from like the UX side, I feel like you kind of get into your own bubble, and I have no idea how it is to work with an engineering team. So it'd be great to like have that person come in and tell us more about like that process.
Anastasia, you're smart.
Thanks.
Because the reality is you live in the product family in UX, but your job is to prepare engineering and in a lot of cases win arguments with engineering. So that relationship has to be one that you really are good at developing. You want a really good relationship. So I think that's a fantastic idea around, you spend a lot of your time churning ideas with product, but then you got to translate them to UX. And one of the reasons why I've been successful in my career is because I've really focused on communication between the departments, between business, which comes out of product, working with product, and then translating that to engineering. And the more that you can do that, and I'll show you my tricks. I don't have any problem showing you my tricks that I've been using for 20 years. The better your relationship with them will be. And one of the key questions, or one of the key questions essentially that came out of my original post on LinkedIn, because I asked you all to share a question, was how do you propagate or grow the necessity of UX in an organization that doesn't appreciate it? That is honestly one of the biggest challenges, because we get hired and engineering just kind of says, oh, you guys are the people that make it look pretty. And that is the farthest thing from the truth. Even if you've done barely a class or two of Springboard, our job is to be the voice of the customer. And it is our job to make sure that we are heavily aligned, and largely because research is cheaper than code. And I can tell you from all those different opportunities I've had, the hardest thing is to code something, get it to the customer and have them say, yeah, that's not working. So UX, I think, is the most important department in an organization, because it's our job to be the voice of the customer. Now, I'm biased, obviously, but that's a great idea around engineering. It's product, HR, engineering, and even customers in some respects. So anybody else have something they want to add?
Yeah, I'll just piggyback off of what she said. My name is Sarah, by the way. I was also thinking that would be a great idea. I'd love to have a chance to learn from some engineers and how to work with them. Another thing that I've kind of been curious about is freelancing. I know that as a junior designer, that would be like down the road a ways in my career,
Good question.
but it's something I've been kind of curious about.
These are fantastic questions. I mean, they really are. And if you guys would do me a favor, if you would post your question in chat, because if we have time at the end, I'd actually like to just take a few of these. I do have a section of insight that I want to share, but I want to have a catalog of these. So if you could, please put those in chat, but they're absolutely fantastic. Anybody else?
I'll jump in there.
Okay.
My name is Ryan. I'm also a Springboard bootcamp student. And I'm just kind of curious. I know there's a lot of information out there on case studies, and that's the main part of what makes up our portfolio. Just kind of curious what the best format is, best practices for that.
Yes, that's a good one. And I have a friend who that's what she does constantly. And I've asked her, she hasn't responded yet, but I'm hoping she'll be able to join us. And I'd like to encapsulate an entire meeting around that question, because your portfolio and how you set up your use case is, and there's a little bit of a sadness to it because it's kind of cookie cutter now. Like you can pretty much see in all the portfolios, they teach you how to do it, and it almost is like, here's a row. And now it's becoming a point where you have to really figure out how to stand out, because if your teacher teaches you this, it doesn't show that you actually know it. Although that's the concern from a hiring manager, is they're all the same now. So you have to really look at how you differentiate yourself. But it does come down to having a really good use case. I have a very good friend who I'm hoping, he works at Google, and I'm hoping that he'll be able to join us. He's in their UX team, and Google has a very specific use case process that they want to use. And so there's lots of possibilities there. Okay. Any other questions you want to tackle?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sue. So I'm not in a boot camp. And so my question was, generally, I've been like a bit overwhelmed with information and not really sure where to start, but I actually really am interested in UX. So are we going to touch on those sections, or, it's going to be part of the presentation?
Well, so today, just to give you a little understanding today is sort of a startup of the process. I'm gathering a lot of the information that you guys want to tackle. And I do have a question, sort of a insight that I want to look at today. It's a shared conversation around ambition. But if we have time at the end of our meetings, we can always tackle questions and open them up. Because I do believe that between all of us, there's probably going to be a lot of really good help and understanding, because a lot of you are probably in the same process. A lot of you probably having the same questions, and tackling those questions together. Hopefully we can have a little bit of time each meeting to do that. But this is definitely one that I want to have an entire session on. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So, all right. I want to give you, each time I want to give you sort of some insight that I think is valuable. And it's part of the process that I think really helps guide my work. And hopefully it can have some value to your work as you begin looking at this as a career. So really, I operate from 3 fundamental values, and these ideas have been churned over my entire career. I've always asked, what are the tools in my tool belt that I think are really important to the process every single time and always have value? And I've reduced it to 3 things, that these are sort of defining questions for when I'm working on a product or a project. First is, it has to be simple. Simplicity is really one of the key areas where you can contribute significantly in UX. I typically try and gear my workflows and UI and processes or use cases down to a 4th grade level as much as possible. Now, I know that seems like, well, what if it's for banking or things like that? Well, a child can still navigate. In fact, children in 4th grade now are probably more prepared than we are, but it has to be simple. And I love engineers, so but what I've learned is engineers by nature like to make things as universal as possible. And the more universal it is, meaning it covers 100% of your use cases, it gets complex. And I appreciate Apple's approach to this, that they're never trying to satisfy 100% of the use cases. There's two sort of school of designs, and that's the Jobs approach, which is simplicity and elegance, and the Microsoft version, which is let's cover 100% of your use cases. I'm very much in the Steve Jobs category, that simplicity is better. There's a very simple UX law that says you cannot count more than 5 objects on first sight. So in other words, if you have 6 things on the table, you have to count those things to know there's 6. Whereas with 5 and below, you can hit it and get it. So it's got to be simple. You want things to be as simple as possible. And believe it or not, the more you really design and iterate, the more simplicity can be had. The second is it has to be intuitive. The first step in a process is usually one of the most important. Do you have an indicator to say start here? Will your user clearly identify where do I need to start? But the second question is, what do they need to do second? And that's not always easy. So you want it to be as intuitive as possible. Give them lots of help. Give them lots of ability to onboard and grow with the product and understand, here's my next step. That is true in virtually everything you will do in UX. How do I know what's my next step? Because users, especially brand new users, don't like to look foolish. So the learning process is a judgmental process. People judge themselves as they're using things. And the more intuitive, the more insightful, the easier it is to use, the less they will judge themselves because they'll feel smart. So when you are designing a product, or you're building a workflow, or you're building a list or a process, make sure that you understand what are my steps and how do I get to those very simply. Make it clear. And the more you do that, the more you increase your experience for your user so that they won't judge themselves, because it is a big problem. So I'll give you my very first case study that I ever learned around UX was in 1995. I was at a leadership summit, and it was the gentleman who started Taco Bell's 69-cent campaign. Now, a lot of you probably don't even remember that. It's okay. But all he did was ask the customer. And during that conversation, he shared with one of his first assignments that he ever had, which was the company was he was working with a major manufacturer. They had a product that they shipped directly to their customer. Everything was supposed to work really well, and it wasn't selling. People were shipping the products back. And he went, and like a good UXer, he wasn't a UXer at the time, it was just in product at the time, but this is what research is about. He went to the customer, watched the product go in the house and how they interacted with the product, and they found that the number one problem the customer had was opening the product packaging. Really, really simple. And he changed the product packaging so it had a zip tie, which wasn't commonplace back then. Now they're fairly commonplace. So you just pull a little tab and it opens up a seal. And that, believe it or not, grew sales by 50%. And I remember that story thinking, okay, it's got to be simple and it's got to be intuitive. Help me use your product. Don't make it hard to use your product. when you get into enterprise, or you get into a startup, you're always going to be having competing concerns saying, we need to do this, we need to do this. You're not going to have very much power in the beginning. That's okay. At some point, we're going to talk about winning arguments and how you bring product and engineering onto your side. I think that's going to be probably one of the most valuable conversations you'll have. It's probably one of my most valuable conversations. But understand, your customer has to be able to use it intuitively. The more they can understand, can you use the information they have already learned on other apps to know common processes that are simple and intuitive, the better the experience will be. And third is elegant. Realistically, I want you to understand elegance matters, okay? Elegance is not what color it is, how pretty it is, how big it is, or how good it looks. Elegance has to do with, as a user, do I have breathing room in my UI? Are things neatly aligned? Does it represent the brand really, really well? Okay. Elegance is about putting your best foot forward, but it's the least important of the three, because if you don't have simple and intuitive, nobody cares what it looks like. Okay. So these are my three fundamental values that I use for every single project I've ever worked on. They go through my mind constantly. How do I make this simpler? 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 What's the next step? Is this intuitive? And the more you embrace that, and these are my values, okay? But they're the ones that I think have stood the test of time my entire career, okay? Any questions about these? I want to open these up. Feel free to jump in. Introduce yourself again so we know who's talking. And questions?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. My name's Kyle. How you guys doing? Yeah, thanks, Jonathan, for putting this together. This is really helpful. I'm really looking forward to future sessions here. I guess my biggest problem right now is I'm in a company where we purchased another company, and it's using a different design system entirely, and just the frustrations with trying to merge them, and how do we live in this multi-parallel universe of different design systems and different look and feels, and sort of how we can make that experience better, because it's all under the same brand now. And of course, there's deadlines with trying to bring that up to speed pretty quick, but just the way to bring just the look and feel and sort of that experience together from different brands before we merged would be helpful.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think that deserves an entire session. Any other questions around these values?
Hi, I have a question.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Rochen, and my question is, now there's this growing trend of minimalistic design, and how does minimalism differ from simplicity?
Great question. Minimalism is trying to go for as few use cases as possible. Simplicity is trying to take the 80% and make them as easy to use. Okay, minimalism, my son is a minimalist. So he wears the same shirt every single day. Simple means you can change the shirt color. That's probably the easiest way I would have to answer that question. I'm not a minimalist in terms of a product designer. I don't think minimalism really serves the customer unless they're minimalists. Okay, because minimalism basically starts with that idea that we want to have as little on to manage. The concepts of minimalism are around you, and it's actually smart. When you walk into In-N-Out Burger, In-N-Out Burger is a good example of minimalism. They said, we're going to serve burgers, fries, and shakes. That's it. And what that does is it simplifies your decision-making experience. And believe it or not, customers who go in In-N-Out Burger have a better overall experience in the buying process than McDonald's. And McDonald's has what, probably 60 or 80 different products. Having to choose those products is a hard process. Okay, believe it or not, it's a decision. In-N-Out Burger simplifies it using a minimalist approach. Okay, that's probably the one good example I think where minimalism works, because you simplify the decision-making process. Does that help a little bit? Does that give me some feedback on that? Was it Rushin or Ruchen?
That helps a lot. Thank you.
Okay, sure. All right.
Do you mind if I just add to that?
Raphael, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Raphael. That's great what you said. There's actually a podcast that's called The Happiness Lab, and the one that talks about it is called Choice Overload. I'm gonna send the link here, and it talks exactly about what you just said, and it's amazing. So
yeah, you know what? Choice overload is something that I would really spend a lot of time learning about. Thank you, Raphael, because and right there is exactly what I hope this group can do for each other. Is all of you have something that you learned yesterday or last week that you think will be valuable in the moment. That is the perfect example. Throw it in the chat. Hey, sorry, my dog is. So that's what I really want you guys to understand is how can we help each other grow by sharing things that we've all learned. I'm not going to have all the answers. The value of the collective is to share insight. So please feel free to do that as much as possible. If you think you have a good article or post or something that you found that is effective for that moment, please don't hesitate to share. Okay. All right.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So starting off in UX, how do we explore?
So is this Nikita?
Yeah, sorry. This is
so please introduce yourself each time. It's just help everybody.
Okay. Yeah. So when you're starting off with your career in UX, how do we evolve and understand what are your core values?
That's a good question. It took me probably 15 years to come up with my own values. So that's why I wanted to start with this, because it really is, these are the things that have served me well. These are the tools in my toolbox that have served me the best. And so hopefully you can start with these, test them out to see if they work for you, but ultimately you may add something. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is it's your life, it's your role, it's your career. What serves you? So that leads me to a really good question that I'll ask. I want to spend probably we got about 20 minutes, and I want to have about 15 minutes for the next question. But ultimately, does anybody have any values that they would like to share that have served them well?
Yeah, this is Corey Nelson. I'm a designer and a UX mentor myself, and some values that I've taken, especially when it comes to interviewing, is make sure that people respect you in the interview process. And if you run into any kind of red flag, no matter how minor it is, that is probably something that's going to manifest further if you decide to take the job, right? I've had interviews where folks wanted me to take an IQ test or some manner of IQ test like that, along with design challenges and all these other kind of crazy things. I mean, if they're not treating you like just a normal human being, then be empowered to walk away, right?
Corey, you are speaking my language, brother. I can't tell you how much I support that idea that the hardest part about getting your first UX job is not compromising yourself, and interview the company as much as they interview you. Don't hesitate to walk away from something where there's toxicity, because let me tell you something, there is a huge cost to toxicity, and you don't want that. You really don't. So thank you, Corey. That was a really good insight. Anybody else?
Hi, this is Swati. I just wanted to bring up the Nielsen-Norman Group's 10 usability heuristics, which we can use. This was, I took a course on Springboard, and this was something that they kind of made sure we knew, so we can gauge every product that we use based on these principles and make sure that every product that we're using actually matches to that standard.
Thank you. Do you have a link to that? If you do, please put that in the chat.
I'll post that, yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any values that you've learned that have served you well?
Hi, I'm Nikita again. So
Yeah,
basically, I'm an architect, and I always followed form follows function concept. So I guess it does also apply on UX. That is one of the values I believe, I guess. And also less is more. These two are the core values as of now.
Those are fantastic. I really like those because the form follows function. I can't tell you, like, you know, there's a normal sketching process, and you go to a wireframe and you go to high fidelity. And one of the reasons why I love working at existing corporations is they usually have a design system. And when you design a design system, I design high fidelity right from the start, especially, it just saves time. If I'm sketching an idea, typically my product managers will sketch something and then I'll put it in high fidelity because we already have the design system. But I agree, less is more. Deal with first primary use cases first, then go to secondary. There's always what's called feature creep, or a desire to solve 100% of the use cases. Like my field team will come in and I'll do a design review with my field team and they'll say, but what about this? And I'll say, well, how often does your customer experience it? Well, not very often, but it's important. Why is it important? So MVPs need to be that less is more. Those are, and form following function. You have to figure out how something works before you figure out how it looks. That's why I do appreciate the wireframing process, is the wireframing strips out the form to a great extent, other than, you know, the layout. So great concepts. Anybody else? Take one more question, one more thought.
I'll go. Oh, sorry.
Go for it.
Oh, sure. I think it's just, I'm just still trying to learn about like the spectrum of like UX is mainly inclusive design and accessibility too. So I've actually been reading, like, even before I journeyed into the UX, like I finished my boot camp just like I think back in June too. So I'm pretty knee deep into like the job hunting too. So I've actually read the book called Mismatch by Kate Holmes, and she did like really amazing work with Microsoft and just like addressing, like even creating a diagram, like explaining inclusivity and like how to design from that approach. And I'm trying to learn how to approach from that as well too, especially in my current like volunteer project too, because I'm helping develop the product for that. Networking for parents with disability children, just like improving their product system around that and making sure it doesn't include certain people on it too. So I think that's the thing I wanted to touch upon on the value I've been trying to learning.
Meryl, that's a really good point. I have a lot of friends that are focusing on usability, and it's a challenge because it does represent a corner case typically, but I had a friend on Facebook talk about walking her son who broke both of his legs and taking him to the park, and she almost crashed 3 times because none of the sidewalks had ramps. Really simple things like that. We don't think about usability for handicapped, the blind, people like that. And I think that's a discipline that is emerging, that's much needed. And it's been around for really 3 or 4 years, and I see it growing a lot because we're recognizing, hey, we need to be an inclusive society, and that's one important way. Companies will typically run, wait, hey, it's 1% of our use case. But as a UX person, that's still part of your user base. And if it is, you need to really think about that very deeply. It's very, very important. So that's a great thought. All right, so here's what I want to do. I want to talk a little bit about ambition today. And we got about 15 minutes. And so this is a bigger question that we will explore continually throughout these sessions. So my question to you is, why do you want to be in UX? And I'm going to challenge you a little bit. Okay. So, but who would like to share and take about 1 minute and give me a sense of what draws you into UX? So why do you want to do this job? Because the reality is that UX is one of the highest paying roles in most companies. So the money's there. It's a great paying role. You have to be really, really good at what you do to get that role. But, and I think, you know, I came out of marketing and design where we were always at the bottom in terms of pay. Now it's becoming, and we're heavy influencers. So why do you want to do this? What made you pick that road? And, you know, there's a fork in the road and it was to do something else. You guys all chose UX. Why? Who'd like to go first?
Can I go first?
Absolutely.
My name is Vache. So I'm basically a graphic designer transitioning into UX design. So
very common.
Yeah. As a graphic designer, it's like creativity is number one. But I've always looked at items and products and said to myself, how can I improve this? How can I make this better? And through that, I learned that that's a big part of UX. It's just problem solving. So that's what got me into UX because of my background in graphic design and my sense of always wanting to solve a problem. That's what brought me to UX design.
That's exactly what got me into it. You know, I came out of graphic design and I was asked to lead product design on a new product. Never done it before and I absolutely felt in love. But what I realized is that I'm a natural problem solver. I like having a challenge like that. And one of the things about UX that we do constantly is you have a problem that needs to be solved. First, your customer wants to do something. So how do you help them do that elegantly and effectively? So I resonate with that very, very deeply. I think that's a very good motivating driver. Who else? Who'd like to share?
I can go. I'm Rafael. Oh, sorry. You want to go? Okay.
Sure.
Susan, you can go next.
Okay, so I'm Rafael. Back home in Brazil, I'm from Brazil, and back home I used to work for TV shows, and I would pick people to participate in stories, and I would actually change those people's lives by picking them, and I would see that on TV, and I would see that after my work was done. So I became a UX designer because I want to change people's lives and I want to see that change. I want to be able to see that and say, I did that. I changed that person's lives. I changed how those people are living their lives.
I'll tell you, one of the things that I resonate with that deeply, because one of the things that I realized is the UX impacts people. It does. And the first time I read a review of our product and people loved it, I was like, holy crap, I'm really doing some good work here. So Susan, you had something.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, first I'm gonna introduce myself. I'm Susan. I'm currently a master's student at University of Washington studying HCI. So I had a background in business, and before I pursue a master's degree in HCI, I was thinking that I was gonna be an entrepreneur, like, you know, solve one problem and then solve it, you know, but I was like struggling, you know, like I wasn't sure like what kind of problem I want to solve, because in order to be an entrepreneur, you have to build a company and you have to really build the value proposition that solve a problem, right? That's why it's like I was struggling. I don't know what kind of problem that I want to solve. And I realized maybe a product designer is a better like career role for me, because that allows me to solve more than one problem, not just one. I can solve multiple problems, and also I really like creativity and value innovation a lot. That's why I'm decided I should be a product designer. Yeah, that's my take.
That's fantastic, because that's one of the values of UX, is that we do get to solve problems. And that's really what business is about. Business is about learning to solve problems and having people pay you for it. And that's when you know you're doing a really good job, is that people will pay you a lot of money for it. You will impact their life by helping them accomplish their goals. It's one of the reasons why I love UX. Who else isn't gone? I'd love to hear from someone who hasn't shared yet on why do you want to be in UX?
I'll share. Oh, I keep doing that.
Go ahead, Brittany.
Go for it.
Okay, I guess I'll go. I'm Camille Thomas. I just finished boot camp at Dev Mountain. And my interest in UX came from, I really enjoyed building websites back when blogs were really popular. And at the time I had a daughter, and so I kind of put off that interest. And as I was looking into pursuing that, I really was interested in UX design because it seemed to be the perfect combination of tech and people. I really liked the connection between the two. And so that's why I pursued it.
Thank you. Who else? Who hasn't shared yet?
I'll go ahead and hop in here. I'm Sarah. I've gone to school for a communication studies degree. I'm enrolled with Kinsey Academy right now. And my interest in UX really boils down to three different points, three different aspects of my personality. First off, I love the UI half of UX as a creative outlet. I've always been an artistic person. I've been a musician since 5th grade. I've always loved the arts and having that creative outlet. I love to make things beautiful. Secondly, I've always been very interested in psychology, social sciences. I love the UX research half for being able to do that research and kind of pick people's brains and understand how they think and what they want in the product and how I can sort of empathize with them and walk a mile in their shoes. I love learning about people. And thirdly, I'm kind of echoing the thoughts of some other people here, but I'm also a problem solver. I find that I'm a very deep thinker. I find that I love to fuss about details and just working through complex problems.
Fantastic. Thank you. Who else? Brittany, I know you were trying to jump in here.
I'll go. Kind of, jumping off of what everybody else says, but yeah, the psychology thing is very interesting. And I think being creative minded isn't as common as creative minded people will think. So we'll usually see something and then somebody will be like, how on earth do you see that? But I think it's kind of like a crossover, because obviously people use the web every day. And if you can show something to somebody that they would normally not see, I think that's pretty special. And I'm very, very new to this, but interested in trying to like mix the technical aspects with, the creative aspects and make something that people really enjoy using.
Well, you have a good dad to show you the way. Just so you all know, Brittany is the daughter of a former business partner of mine, so I know her story a little bit. I've watched her grow up. In fact, I've known you your entire life. But I think you're absolutely right that creative is not always. It is truly a talent. My business partner, when I had my marketing company, was one of the most gifted creatives I've ever met. But what I want to give you is a sense that you can learn to be creative. I'm a creative. I've always been a creative. I started out in film and I transitioned into product design for my marketing career. But you can learn what works really well and you can make a great career out of it. You don't have to be an artist. Someone who can, like the idea of someone who just opens their sketchbook and comes up with something fantastic every time. I don't know anybody who does that. Even my business partner didn't do that. He taught me the tools and tricks and really techniques and really, I should say the practices that help you design well. And you can learn those. I did. You learn how to mimic, learn how to take a piece and modify it. You don't always have to start from scratch. I think that's one of the things that I love about Dribbble and all of the artistic and creative sharing communities is you need inspiration, but you need an inspiration jumping point. You don't want to copy because that's illegal, but it's totally okay to start with someone else's idea and riff on that. That's probably 90% of how I operate, because I realize I don't want to have to rewrite everything. I need inspiration to say, that's kind of what I'm looking for, but I want to tweak it here. So that's a really great point, Brittany. Thank you for that. And we got time for about one more thing, or one more person. Who'd like to share?
I can go.
Okay.
Okay, Khushbu, you just go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so hi, I'm Khushbu, everyone. I'm a UX designer starting off my career after graduating with Masters in Human-Computer Interaction. My story much more resonates with Camille, who said that she was building websites previously. I was a web developer, and that's when, in my journey, I realized that how important it is to keep the users' engagement with the product that they are using. And as well as I got interest into accessibility at that point, being a web developer. And that's when I realized about HCI programs over here, and I jumped into it, and I have been loving this throughout.
Thank you. That's really great. Okay, so we're at the end of our time, but I want to wrap this up and let you all know. First, I want to encourage you, if you have not joined UX Mentorship, please do. Have your conversations there, get to know each other, connect with each other. If you heard something that's valuable, I will be downloading this and posting this there so you can see it or review it. And then I'll also be taking a lot of our notes and that we have in the chat and sharing those there. So it was a pleasure to meet all of you. I hope to meet you more in the future. And I want to see if there's a poll that I'll gather some of these ideas and then have them see which ones we'd like to tackle first. So please, please feel free to continually add ideas to the UX Mentorship board so we can just keep our ideas there. Thank you everyone for your time. I appreciate your participation. This was exactly what I was hoping for, that people would step up and really share to make this your experience. And I hope that you've learned something from this just to begin. This is an ongoing conversation, and hopefully I'll see you next week. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.